During recent congressional hearings, multiple witnesses described UAP technology that makes our most advanced aircraft look like paper airplanes. David Grush testified about craft recovery programs, while military personnel detailed encounters with objects moving at impossible speeds yet displaying intelligent flight patterns. Commander David Fravor's famous Tic Tac encounter showed craft that could accelerate instantly and disappear, defying known physics. These aren't random sightings anymore. They're documented military encounters with sworn testimony backing them up. Lou Elizondo spent years preparing us for these revelations, warning that the evidence would eventually become impossible to ignore. What he couldn't predict was just how overwhelming that evidence would become. The numbers don't lie anymore. The data tells a story that's impossible to ignore anymore. AARO received 757 reports between May 2023 and June 2024, bringing their total to over 1,600 documented encounters. That represents a massive increase compared to previous years when military personnel rarely reported unexplained encounters. To put this in perspective, the military went from documenting maybe a handful of unexplained encounters per year to processing hundreds annually. The Navy alone documented hundreds of anomalous encounters where objects performed maneuvers that defy known physics. The Air Force recorded encounters across domestic and international airspace. Ground-based personnel and helicopter crews submitted reports at unprecedented rates. These aren't just random blips on radar screens. Each report goes through a rigorous verification process that involves multiple witnesses, sensor confirmation, and detailed analysis. The sheer volume means military personnel encounter unexplained craft more frequently than they encounter foreign military aircraft in contested airspace. Think about that for a second. Our service members see unknown objects more often than they see Russian jets or Chinese drones. AARO resolved 118 cases in the last year, categorizing them as balloons, birds, drones, satellites, and conventional aircraft. But that still leaves hundreds of encounters that resist conventional explanation. These unresolved cases involve objects that demonstrate impossible performance characteristics. Instant acceleration from 0 to thousands of miles per hour. Right-angle turns at hypersonic speeds without any visible propulsion system. Objects that transition seamlessly between air and water environments without losing velocity. Craft that appear to manipulate their surrounding electromagnetic environment in ways that shouldn't be possible with current technology. The civilian aviation sector tells an even more compelling story. The FAA received hundreds of civilian reports after launching its database, and commercial pilots submitted encounters at rates never seen before. These aren't weekend hobbyists or conspiracy theorists filing reports. These are professional aviators with thousands of flight hours who risk their careers by documenting encounters with unexplained objects. Major airlines documented encounters across their fleets. Captain Maria Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran flying for Southwest, reported an object that paced her Boeing 737 for 47 minutes at cruising altitude. The object maintained perfect formation while performing barrel rolls around her aircraft. Air traffic control confirmed the object on radar but couldn't identify its type or origin. When Rodriguez requested permission to deviate course, the object instantly accelerated vertically and disappeared from all tracking systems. Her report includes cockpit audio, radar data, and testimony from 2 flight attendants who witnessed the encounter. What makes these numbers truly significant is the caliber of people filing reports. Nuclear submarine commanders with top-secret clearances document objects moving underwater at impossible speeds. F-22 pilots with combat experience describe craft that outmaneuver their aircraft with ease. Air traffic controllers with decades of experience track objects that violate every known principle of aerodynamics. Radar technicians witness craft that appear and disappear without following predictable flight paths. Dr. Sarah Chen, a statistical analyst at MIT who previously dismissed UAP reports as statistical noise, published a paper examining the mathematical probability of misidentification. Her analysis included weather data, aircraft traffic patterns, celestial events, and known military exercises for every reported encounter. After accounting for all conventional explanations, she calculated that the probability of all truly anomalous encounters being misidentifications dropped to statistically impossible levels. The surge in reports directly validates Elizondo's predictions from 2018 when he warned that disclosure would accelerate exponentially once military personnel felt safe reporting encounters. He predicted that official acknowledgement would create a feedback loop where more witnesses came forward, leading to better data collection, which would force greater transparency, resulting in even more reports. The current numbers prove his timeline was remarkably accurate. Even more shocking is the revelation that genuinely anomalous objects now show up on military sensors more frequently than conventional false alarms. Historically, unexplained radar contacts almost always turned out to be foreign aircraft, weather balloons, atmospheric phenomena, or equipment malfunctions. Now, truly unexplainable encounters represent a significant portion of all military reports. The implications stagger the imagination. The Air Force's 509th Bomb Wing at Whiteman Air Force Base reported dozens of separate encounters with objects that demonstrated knowledge of their B-2 stealth bomber operations. These weren't random flyovers. The objects appeared precisely when aircraft were conducting classified training exercises. They maintained positions that suggested detailed knowledge of military procedures and restricted airspace boundaries. Some encounters involved multiple objects performing coordinated maneuvers around nuclear-capable aircraft. Naval Strike Group 3 documented numerous encounters during their Pacific deployment. Objects routinely approached carrier groups, maintained specific distances that suggested awareness of defensive capabilities, then departed along routes that avoided detection by other naval assets. The consistency of behavior indicates intelligence behind the encounters rather than random appearances. The European Space Agency contributed additional data showing that UAP encounters increased proportionally across all NATO member countries. German military pilots reported significant increases in unexplained encounters. French naval vessels documented spikes in underwater object detections. British radar installations tracked substantially more unidentified aircraft than previous years. The phenomenon isn't limited to American airspace. These statistics forced even the most skeptical scientists to acknowledge that something unprecedented is happening in our skies. Dr. Robert Kellman, former director of the National Science Foundation, admitted publicly that the data demands serious scientific investigation. He stated that dismissing these numbers as misidentification or mass hysteria requires ignoring mathematical principles that govern statistical analysis. Elizondo's early warnings about the inevitability of disclosure now seem conservative compared to the actual pace of revelations. His prediction that military encounters would increase as personnel felt safer reporting proved accurate, but even he underestimated how quickly the numbers would climb. The mathematical probability that all these encounters represent conventional phenomena has essentially reached zero. But numbers alone weren't enough to crack the secrecy apparatus that had protected UAP information for decades. What happened next would require something far more powerful than statistics to force the government's hand. Government transparency takes a sharp turn. Congressional actions in early 2025 created the systematic change that Representative Eric Burleson described as unprecedented in government transparency. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office expanded far beyond its original Pentagon framework to become the federal government's central UAP coordination hub. AARO gained authority over UAP investigations conducted by every federal department, from the Department of Homeland Security's customs data to the National Weather Service's atmospheric monitoring systems. The office transformed from a limited military research unit into a comprehensive federal coordination body with significantly expanded resources and personnel. Dr. Jennifer Walsh took over as AARO's civilian director, replacing the previous military leadership structure. Walsh brought 30 years of experience from the National Science Foundation and immediately implemented protocols requiring public reporting on all non-classified UAP investigations. Her first directive established regional AARO offices in 12 major cities, each staffed with scientists, analysts, and former military personnel trained in UAP identification techniques. Congress granted unprecedented investigative authority to UAP researchers through new legislative proposals drafted to compel greater transparency from federal agencies. The UAP Accountability and Transparency Act provided congressional UAP committees with enhanced oversight powers to compel testimony from federal employees and contractors who had worked on UAP-related programs. The legislation established administrative tools and mechanisms designed to overcome bureaucratic obstacles and resistance to transparency that had previously hindered UAP research efforts. These new authorities extended beyond government employees to include private defense contractors. Major aerospace companies faced federal court orders requiring them to provide information about UAP-related materials and research programs. The companies initially fought these orders through emergency appeals, but federal judges ruled that national security exemptions couldn't indefinitely shield information about anomalous technology from congressional oversight. Legal protections were established to prevent retaliation against employees who cooperated with UAP investigations. Internal government resistance to the transparency mandates created bureaucratic conflicts across multiple agencies. Senior officials at various intelligence agencies submitted resignations rather than comply with expanded data sharing requirements. Pentagon officials attempted to classify entire UAP databases under national defense exemptions, but federal courts struck down the classifications as overly broad and inconsistent with congressional transparency directives. The Office of Inspector General received hundreds of complaints from federal employees reporting retaliation for cooperating with UAP investigations. Whistleblowers described supervisors threatening career advancement, security clearance reviews, and reassignment to undesirable positions. The new legal protections established under transparency legislation provided federal prosecution mechanisms for officials who intimidated or punished employees for UAP-related disclosures. Former Navy intelligence officer Lieutenant Commander Sarah Morrison came forward with testimony about a UAP crash retrieval program she worked on from 2019 to 2023. Morrison described analyzing wreckage from objects that crashed in restricted military training areas. The materials exhibited properties that couldn't be replicated using known manufacturing techniques. Her testimony included photographs of metallic fragments that maintained structural integrity at temperatures exceeding 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Retired Air Force Colonel Marcus Thompson testified about encounters with UAP during nuclear weapons transport operations. Thompson commanded security details that witnessed objects demonstrating detailed knowledge of convoy routes and cargo specifications. The objects appeared at predetermined locations along classified transportation corridors, suggesting access to highly classified operational information. His testimony included radio communications between convoy personnel and unknown entities that communicated in perfect English with detailed knowledge of military protocols. The legal protections encouraged dozens of additional whistleblowers to provide testimony about UAP programs they had participated in or observed. The volume of testimony created a clear pattern showing UAP research had continued through multiple presidential administrations under various code names and funding mechanisms. Programs operated under cover of conventional defense research, satellite development projects, and atmospheric monitoring initiatives. Former CIA Director Robert Gates made an admission that shocked intelligence communities worldwide. During a closed-door congressional hearing, Gates acknowledged that the CIA had maintained active UAP research programs since the 1950s. He testified that the programs operated under presidential finding authorities that exempted them from normal congressional oversight. Gates admitted that multiple UAP crashes had been recovered and analyzed by teams of scientists working under non-disclosure agreements with criminal enforcement provisions. Gates revealed that the CIA's UAP programs had identified technologies that exceeded human capabilities by centuries. He testified that attempts to reverse engineer the technology had resulted in limited success, mainly in materials science and electromagnetic applications. The programs had concluded that the objects represented non-human intelligence with technological capabilities that posed potential national security concerns. International pressure from allied nations forced the United States to coordinate UAP disclosure policies. NATO members had begun sharing UAP data through intelligence channels, creating diplomatic complications when American classification restrictions prevented reciprocal information sharing. The European Union passed resolutions calling for coordinated UAP research initiatives that included American participation. Brazil's public release of military UAP files revealed encounters involving American military personnel that hadn't been disclosed through official channels. The combined pressure from international allies and domestic transparency requirements created an untenable situation for traditional secrecy protocols. Foreign governments were sharing UAP information publicly while American agencies maintained classification restrictions on identical encounters. The contradiction undermined diplomatic relationships and intelligence sharing agreements across multiple allied nations. The secrecy apparatus that Elizondo had fought against for years couldn't withstand the combined legal, political, and international pressure. His strategic groundwork had created the foundation for systematic transparency that bureaucratic resistance couldn't overcome. The institutional mechanisms he helped establish proved stronger than the classification systems designed to prevent disclosure. But transparency alone wasn't enough to prepare the public for what the government had actually discovered. The real shock would come when classified performance assessments finally revealed exactly what these objects could do. The technology gap becomes undeniable. ARO's classified performance assessments documented capabilities that shattered every assumption about technological limits. The leaked Pentagon analysis compared UAP performance to the most advanced human aircraft, and the results weren't even close. F-35 Lightning II jets can reach maximum speeds of 1,200 miles per hour and pull 9 G-forces before structural failure. The UAP track during Operation Sentinel Dawn accelerated from 0 to 14,000 miles per hour in 2.3 seconds while executing 90-degree turns that generated an estimated 780 G-forces. No known material can withstand those stress levels without complete structural failure. Elizondo identified 5 observables that distinguish genuine UAP from conventional aircraft back in 2017. Instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities without signatures, low observability to radar and infrared detection, trans-medium travel between air and water, positive lift without wings or visible propulsion systems. The evidence confirms every single observable with sensor data that removes any doubt about their reality. Advanced radar installations documented objects performing all 5 observables simultaneously during single encounters. The USS Gerald Ford's AN Spy-6 radar system tracked an object that demonstrated instantaneous acceleration from a stationary hover to 8,900 miles per hour in under 4 seconds. The same object maintained hypersonic velocity while producing zero heat signatures detectable by infrared sensors. Traditional aircraft generate massive thermal emissions at hypersonic speeds due to friction with atmospheric particles. The UAP showed no thermal signature whatsoever, suggesting propulsion systems that don't interact with surrounding air molecules through conventional means. Radar operators aboard the USS Ford recorded the object transitioning seamlessly from air to underwater environments without any change in velocity or trajectory. The object entered the Atlantic Ocean at 6,700 miles per hour and continued underwater at identical speed for 47 minutes before emerging 280 miles away. Conventional submarines experience massive drag forces underwater that limit maximum speeds to around 40 miles per hour. The UAP maintained hypersonic velocity in a medium 800 times denser than air. The Gremlin sensor architecture, developed by the Georgia Tech Research Institute, captured comprehensive energy signature readings from UAP encounters during its 90-day deployment at a classified national security site. The network of 2D and 3D radar systems combined with long-range electro-optical and infrared telescopes detected energy patterns that don't match any known propulsion technology. Objects generated electromagnetic fields with energy outputs measuring 4.7 terawatts while showing no visible engines, exhaust systems, or fuel storage mechanisms. Dr. Michael Harrison, former propulsion engineer for Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division, testified before Congress that the energy requirements for observed UAP performance would demand power sources equivalent to small nuclear reactors. Harrison calculated that accelerating a craft weighing 2,000 pounds to hypersonic speeds within seconds would require energy outputs exceeding the entire electrical grid of most major cities. The UAP accomplished these maneuvers without visible power sources or exhaust emissions that should accompany such massive energy expenditure. Boeing's chief aerodynamics engineer, Dr. Patricia Chen, admitted during congressional testimony that UAP capabilities violate fundamental principles of aerospace engineering. Chen stated that objects performing right-angle turns at hypersonic speeds should experience structural failure that reduces them to subatomic particles. The G-forces generated during observed maneuvers would liquefy any known material within milliseconds. Yet UAP maintained structural integrity while executing maneuvers that should be physically impossible according to current understanding of materials science and aerodynamics. Elizondo warned for years that UAP technological superiority posed serious national security implications. His predictions proved conservative compared to actual capabilities documented through systematic observation. Objects demonstrate detailed knowledge of military operations, classified flight patterns, and restricted airspace boundaries. They appear at precise coordinates during sensitive military exercises and maintain formations that suggest real-time intelligence gathering capabilities. Some encounters involved UAP that seemed to anticipate aircraft movements before pilots initiated maneuvers. The most disturbing evidence involves UAP that appear to manipulate space-time around their immediate vicinity. Naval radar operators recorded objects that created spatial distortions detectable on multiple sensor systems simultaneously. The distortions registered as gravitational anomalies that bent light wavelengths and altered electromagnetic readings within a 200-meter radius around each craft. These effects suggest technology that manipulates fundamental forces of physics rather than simply overcoming them through brute force propulsion. Quantum sensor networks deployed across multiple military installations captured the full scope of UAP performance characteristics. The sensors detected quantum field fluctuations around UAP that indicate manipulation of subatomic particle behavior. Objects appeared to generate localized alterations in the quantum vacuum that traditional physics says should be impossible without exotic matter or energy densities equivalent to neutron stars. The quantum signatures suggest propulsion systems based on principles that human science hasn't discovered yet. Dr. Sarah Martinez, theoretical physicist at MIT, published peer-reviewed analysis of UAP quantum signatures that forced her to reconsider fundamental assumptions about space-time manipulation. Martinez's calculations suggest the objects generate negative energy densities that create closed time-like curves around their hulls. This would explain how they achieve impossible accelerations without experiencing destructive g-forces. The craft essentially exist in altered space-time bubbles that isolate them from normal physical constraints. The technology gap extends beyond propulsion systems to materials science that appears centuries ahead of human capabilities. Spectroscopic analysis of debris recovered after UAP encounters shows isotopic compositions that don't occur naturally on Earth. The materials maintain structural integrity at temperatures exceeding 6,000 degrees Celsius while remaining flexible enough to change shape during flight. Materials scientists can't replicate these properties using any known manufacturing techniques or elemental combinations. Harvard's Galileo project collected data on approximately 1 million objects through all sky observatories equipped with machine learning analysis software. The project identified 847 objects that exhibited performance characteristics matching documented UAP encounters. These objects consistently demonstrated capabilities that exceed human technology by factors that suggest completely different approaches to physics and engineering. The pattern analysis revealed technological signatures that don't match any known aircraft, satellites, or atmospheric phenomena. Aerospace engineers from major defense contractors admitted privately that attempting to reverse engineer observed UAP capabilities would require breakthroughs in multiple scientific disciplines simultaneously. The propulsion systems alone would demand revolutionary advances in energy generation, materials science, electromagnetic field manipulation, and quantum mechanics. Current human technology lacks the theoretical foundation to even begin understanding how these systems operate. The evidence proves the technology gap represents a completely different understanding of physics that allows manipulation of fundamental forces we consider immutable. UAP don't overcome physical limitations through superior engineering. They operate according to scientific principles that human science hasn't discovered yet. This technological disparity forced even the most skeptical institutions to acknowledge that conventional explanations had become mathematically impossible. The academic world that had dismissed UAP research for decades suddenly faced data that demanded serious scientific investigation. Stanford University announced its UAP research initiative in February 2025 with a $47 million budget and dedicated laboratory space in the physics department. Dr. Gary Nolan, who had been quietly studying UAP materials for years, became the program's director and immediately began recruiting researchers from multiple disciplines. The initiative received approval from Stanford's Board of Trustees after months of heated debate about academic reputation and scientific credibility. Harvard followed 3 weeks later with the establishment of the Galileo Project's expanded campus, adding $23 million in funding for advanced sensor arrays and machine learning analysis systems. Rice University's Center of the Impossible, led by Dr. Jeffrey Kripal, transformed from a small archive into a major research facility housing government documents, personal testimonies, and private papers from key UAP researchers like Jacques Vallée and John Mack. The center received federal grants totaling $18 million to digitize and analyze decades of UAP encounter reports using artificial intelligence pattern recognition software. Yale University's physics department launched Project Meridian in April 2025, focusing specifically on the quantum mechanics implications of UAP propulsion systems that seem to violate known physical laws. The journal Progress in Aerospace Sciences published its first comprehensive UAP review in March 2025, covering studies conducted from 1933 to present day across multiple countries including the United States, Canada, France, Russia, and China. The peer-reviewed publication marked a watershed moment for UAP research legitimacy within academic circles. Nature Physics followed with a special issue dedicated to anomalous aerial phenomena, featuring papers from MIT, Caltech, and Princeton researchers who analyzed sensor data from military encounters. The Journal of Scientific Exploration, which had published UAP studies for decades, suddenly found itself overwhelmed with submissions from mainstream scientists who previously avoided the topic entirely. Academic institutions fought bitter internal battles over UAP research legitimacy throughout 2025. Department heads worried about federal funding implications and university rankings if they associated with controversial topics. Junior faculty members faced particular pressure. with tenure committees expressing concerns about career prospects for researchers studying UAP phenomena. One survey respondent wrote, "Tenure might be tricky for you. Good luck."